Jacobs. I'm the host of the Sports Psychology Hour. It's a radio show in Kansas City that airs every Sunday morning from 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time on 810WHB.com. And I've had the show for years. We're on our 33rd year on the radio. I'm going to be starting my 44th year as work as a sports psychologist, one of the first trained sports psychologists in the country. In addition to the radio show, we've launched the Sports Psychology Hour as a podcast and now via live stream. And I want you to visit my website, which is winnersunlimited.com, winnersunlimited.com, where you can listen to the podcast. Click on the podcast tab. I've got close to 10 years podcasts on there. I have interviews with all kinds of people, all kinds of sports, all kinds of areas of life. We talk about performance and success. That's winnersunlimited.com. And we're doing a new series of conversations focusing on coaches and athletes. And today, lucky to have Matt Rieger with us. He's a certified mental performance coach in Stamford, Connecticut. So thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about what you do. I've worked with, you work with baseball players a lot. I'm one of the first sports psychologists in baseball back in 1990 with the Royals. Worked with baseball players my whole career. I was with them full time. And then again, from 2008 to 2012, I worked with them. So tell us a little about what you're doing, and let's talk about the mental side of baseball. We've got the Olympics going on right now. Everybody's talking about visualization, mental preparation, mental health, everything I've talked about forever that people used to say was a bunch of BS. And now it's like, oh, wow, that stuff's important. So let me get your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, I think the Olympics has been a great time to kind of go and show the power that the mental training goes and does for athletes. And I think for the first time, a lot of the interviews have actually gone more in depth than they have in the past in terms of actually getting into how athletes have been training on the mental side, not just an athlete saying like, oh, it's been a lot of a mental preparation. They've actually gone a lot more depth with the visualization, with, like you said, self-talk, the breathing, a lot of those skills. And it's brought a lot more recognition, I think, to the field itself, especially in this one. And then for myself, mainly, like I said, what I do, we're primarily baseball that we work with. And the biggest thing within that, we work primarily like high school through the professional level. Right now is going to kind of be more of our high school and college athletes, just being the summertime. And we help them in a number of different ways, whether that's through one-on-one sessions, through some group conversations and discussions that we call roundtables that we do. I'm currently running like a summer mindset program that's helping athletes navigate the different things that happen in season. And then we've done a couple of experiential or hands-on workshops with the athletes as well, utilizing the space we have.
You mentioned visualization, and if anyone's watched at least 5 minutes of an Olympic event, they're going to hear that word mentioned by some announcer or some athlete or some coach. I've talked about visualization forever. And back when I first started doing research for my dissertation in grad school in 1979, there's virtually nothing on it. In fact, I was showing one of my clients last week my dissertation in my office. There's about 20 pages of research in sports psychology from 1980. That's what was out there. Was nothing. Now there's volumes and volume. You could fill buildings with it. Visualization has become very, very prominently talked about at the Olympics. And in baseball, it's something I've talked about forever. I have visualization exercises for hitting and pitching on my website to go through a breathing exercise, a muscle tightening, loose exercise, a confidence building section, a visualization section. And I've used them forever. I've had them out since the mid 90s, early 90s actually. And what I found is that if an athlete takes the time to visualize on a consistent basis, they're going to have a much greater chance of success than not. I want to get your thoughts on that. And how do you use visualization with what you do?
For sure. It's a very powerful skill that can be learned and taught. I think a lot of mental skills are, I wouldn't say easy to do, but a little bit are able to be done, where visualization and imagery is something that takes a lot more practice probably for a lot of athletes, where they have to go and use it and try it and see how it works for them. For myself, a lot of times I'm doing it to help build athletes' confidence along the way, whether that's coming back from injury, whether that's working on a different pitch or swing technique for mechanics. One of like the big ways that I use it, especially for someone who's new to imagery, is I always try and have them see it work as they want it. So I'll call that like a perfect pitch. and where it's a quick summary of like key cues that they want to focus on while throwing or pitching, and then having it be broken down to their different pitches. So it's like a 2 or 3 sentence thing that would take them like 15-20 seconds to read through. So then they can kind of get into the habit of seeing themselves succeed with that pitch, and then also inherently develop some quick verbal cues that they can use for themselves when they are actually on the mound or hitting, to be able to go and reference that when they're actually having to perform.
I had the privilege, as I mentioned earlier, being one of the first sports psychologists in baseball at the 1990 Royals, and I got to watch George Brett win his third batting title that year. And he, earlier in the year, was struggling, and he put it together and came out and actually won the batting title on his last at bat of the year. We were in Cleveland, and he got a pinch hit single. Ricky Henderson, who he was battling with, went over 4, and George beat him out by hundreds of percentage point. And it was fun to get to watch him every day, watch his regimen, and he used visualization a lot. I talked quite a bit with all the players about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something he believed very strongly in. This is 34 years ago. That really helped him. I've seen throughout my career. Let's talk about baseball for a minute here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sport where if you succeed 3 times out of 10 as a hitter, you're going to Hall of Fame, and you make it to the major leagues. Getting to the major leagues is so difficult, unless you're extremely talented like a Bobby Witt Jr. the Royals have, or an Aaron Judge, or Ohtani, any of those types of players. It's very difficult. I just saw a story today about a minor league player in the Cubs system who's retiring, who's been in the minor leagues for years. He's doing quite well. In fact, he'll probably get called up in September if he decided not to retire. He said, "I'm done. I need to move on in my life." This is such a hard thing. So, how do you help athletes who are struggling with their confidence and their momentum to get to that level?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I think the biggest thing with it, especially if we talk about baseball specifically, it's going and having them realize like there are going to be a lot of ups and downs that happen throughout the game, and it's not going to be this easy journey, especially if you're going through the minor league systems, which that in itself can take many, many years, as you know. So like recognizing it's probably not going to happen as fast as you think it will. And also there's going to be some bumps in the road. And then within that, helping them understand planning for that, and then being able to come up with systems that they can control and things that are in their toolbox to continue to grind and kind of have the right resources, whether that's nutritionists, training coaches, technical coaches that they trust to be able to go to in these kind of up and down moments. Obviously the mental side as well, and then have those as systems in their tool bag to be able to refer to be able to then go and ultimately rely on and have systems when these troubling times do come up, and then have plans that are in their control to be able to go back to of systems along the way.
So self-confidence, I talk about preparation, focus, attitude, and confidence.
Yeah.
In that order. Preparation is about how you get ready mentally, physically, psychologically, nutritionally, emotionally, spiritually. Focus is about what you're concentrating on internally and externally. What are the distractions that get in the way?
Mm-hmm.
I would say you can have a positive, negative, or realistic attitude, and then the foundation of all that's confidence, the ability to believe in yourself. I've seen with all stars how their confidence can be so shaky when they hit a slump, or they start failing, or not throwing strikes if they're a pitcher, or striking all the time. So what do you do when you encounter a baseball player who starts to struggle with their confidence, starts to struggle with their mindset when they get into that negative mode? Because it's so easy to get stuck in that.
Yeah, it's extremely easy. Like you said, you can fail 70% of the time and still do really well. And that's where really trying to go and help them understand that we want to be able to try and make the performance and how we're reacting to the performance a little bit more consistent, and not these up and down waves of relying so much on the outcome to determine that confidence, but more things like you mentioned, like your preparation, things like your focus that you're having with your self-talk, what you said, like positive, negative, realistic, Also kind of things with your body language that you're having along the way, and going back to your routines and preparation and using those as your markers of how well you're doing, of things in your control of your process, of am I going up to the plate with a routine of maybe a cue to tell yourself or a way to relax yourself, and doing that consistently along the way. And then the outcome is something that you can't do too much about. You can go more and do more with your process along the way. So kind of helping them get more consistent confidence, where it's more like steady line than like big ups and downs, relying solely on the outcome for that confidence.
I've got here in Kansas City, obviously, I work with a lot of athletes who play here. I have one of the Chiefs Super Bowl jerseys in my office, a player I've worked with several years. And on his jersey, he has the letters FOE, focus on effort. And I always talk about focus on effort versus focus on results.
Yep.
One of the things that's concerned me a lot about baseball in the last really 5 years is the analytics emphasis, to the point that it's gotten so caught up in that the emotional, psychological side sort of gets pushed aside. I remember when the Tampa Bay and the Dodgers were playing in the World Series a few years ago. Blake Snell was pitching. I think it was Game 6 or Game 7 in LA. He'd given up, I believe, one hit, and then it was about the seventh inning, and the Tampa is winning, and he gave up, I believe, a single, and they took him out. And he was pretty upset about that when they took him out. And I didn't blame him. I mean, he pitched great, but the manager stated, the analytics said it was time to take him out. Then Mookie Betts was quoted after the game, which they won because he was one of the stars of the game, said, hey, when he left the game, it's like, all right, great, we're going to win now, because we couldn't hit on him. And that's where the emotional, psychological perspective comes in so strongly, that sometimes I think there's so much emphasis on the numbers and analytics, we forget about the human side. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's a big struggle that we're seeing at the youth level as well, is it's so numbers outcome driven right now. The big one obviously now being the enthrallment and like excitement over velocity with pitching, as with being the big one, that you have high schoolers and people like that's all they care about is hitting a PR in that pull down or mound bullpen that they're trying to do, where the ball can go any which direction, but if they hit that PR, that was a productive
Right. That's all they care about.
bullpen. Exactly. And that's once again, that's that really high and low that they might be experiencing, where they can have a great bullpen, but if they didn't hit that PR, to them it's a failure. And it becomes so much, and like you said with the analytics, there's so much information out there now that it really, for some, complicates what they're trying to do. And it's wild of how much it's like they throw the ball, and before it even gets to the catcher or the nine pocket or the net, they're already spinning around to look at the TrackMan or Rapsodo for what the spin rate was, spin efficiency, velocity on it was, that they're just so, it's very reliant on it. And it becomes a challenge, because then you're trying to also show them that like by living and dying by this, like you're going to be going on a pretty big emotional roller coaster.
I'm going to quote the Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker in an interview last year during the Super Bowl, after the Super Bowl. He set all these records in the Super Bowl the last couple of years, and he said every kick is a big kick. And what I take from that is, doesn't matter what the kick is, it matters. So if a player could go up to bat, or a pitcher on the mound could say every pitch is a big pitch, this pitch isn't any more important than the other, I think that can even them out emotionally and not go through the highs and lows. Let me get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I don't know who says it, but it's like the most important pitch is the next one, or most important shot or swing or whatever that might be. And I think that's the biggest piece of it, is these being so enthused about the outcome or the results that happen. It's getting a lot of athletes out into the future, so a lot more anxious, a lot more timid of what's going to happen and trying to predict it, where reality, you want to be more in the present, like you said, pitch to pitch or kick to kick or shot to shot, to be able to go and just be trying to control that one pitch, because once you get so far out into the future, it feels like such a bigger task that's about to happen. And then that can get your mind racing. It can get you more anxious, more tight, intense. So it's absolutely a massive thing to be able to take it. Like some of the cliches of like one pitch at a time really come into play, even though they kind of get a little bit made fun of when everyone's like, oh, one pitch at a time. But in reality, that is what you want to be doing.
I recall one player on the Royals when I worked with them. One day I'm at batting practice, and he came out of the cage where he's hitting, and he was in a slump. He was hitting about 220 something. He was about a 280 hitter, and he's a big guy. Grabs me, Doc, what's wrong with me? I'm effed up, Doc. I'm all effed up. And I said, well, there are probably a lot of things wrong with you, but you're not a bad person. And he goes, I can't hit anything. I've been striking out. I'm not making contact. Because you know what it's like to be in that batter's box and look at that scoreboard up there, the Royals, big scoreboard right behind the pitcher. And I said, let me ask you a question. Why are you looking at the scoreboard, not at the pitcher? And it was interesting because he then stopped, looked at the ground, and he looked at me, got a big grin on my face. He goes, you're right. I'm looking at all my stats about how terrible I am, how bad I suck, instead of focusing on the next pitch. Well, that night he went 2 for 4, drove the winning run, came up to me afterwards and said, that you're right. It's like I've been focusing so much on the numbers. And what I'm seeing with youth sports today, Matt, is so much of an emphasis, like you were saying earlier, about, pitch speed and bat speed and how fast the ball comes off the bat. We're seeing all these injuries now with young baseball players, especially, specifically with a lot of pitchers with shoulder injuries, elbow injuries, because of the emphasis on throwing the ball so hard. And the research is proving that there are a lot more injuries with young baseball pitchers. And you're seeing a lot of pitchers, 15, 16, 17, having Tommy John surgery, which to me is ridiculous because there's been that emphasis. Well, if you throw hard and you can get to 90, you're going to get a scholarship and all this. Well, then you get hurt and then you're all messed up. I want to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you got a lot of athletes that are, like you said, so focused on the velocity of things and trying to throw as hard as they can, max effort a lot more. And they're also doing it a lot more around the clock or year round with not playing a lot of other sports. So it's getting a lot more specified of doing one sport only, and they're doing it through the spring, the summer, the fall. And one thing that at ATP we're trying to track more of is like number of innings, which might not be the best indicator, but like between those spring, summer, and fall seasons, because the high school coach doesn't talk to the summer coach, and the summer coach doesn't talk to the fall coach that much, and a lot of innings get accrued that don't get realized. And also what we're seeing, especially at the youth level, you have a lot of kids that are not sleeping enough, pretty underweight, and like just indicators as well that are kind of red flags of potential signs for injury down the road, especially the weight one of kids being 30, 40 pounds underweight. And as we know, like the saying of like mass equals gas and like force production and everything. And that's like a big part of kids not realizing, like, hey, we got to eat more real food to be able to help support some of these higher velocities.
Baseball is pretty well regimented sport where, you've got hitting off tees and you've got coach pitch and then you have kid pitch and then it graduates from there to where you have rec teams, the club teams, the traveling teams, the competitive teams, the whole thing. What's your opinion about the whole youth baseball world? I feel, and you hit on something there. First of all, I've had interviews with. I've been on the air for 33 years, and we've been doing this Facebook show now for well over a year. Most coaches we have on will sit and say, kids need to take a break. First of all, they shouldn't play year round. They're going to wear themselves out, burn themselves out. Second of all, we're starting kids at these organized teams way too young, and they're burning out. The burnout rate amongst youth sports is enormous by the time they're 12. I mean, 80% of kids are quitting because they've been playing on teams since they were 4 or 5. I mean, I'm going to be 70 years old in a couple months, 4 months. Don't get there till I get there. But when I grew up, we didn't have all these organized teams until fifth, sixth grade. Didn't exist. Now we're seeing. I mean, there's a soccer organization here in Kansas City that has tournaments for 2-year-olds, which is obscene. Okay, so what's your thought working with all these kids and seeing some of these problems? What do you think we need to do, starting at the youth level with a sport like baseball? Not that
I
you or I
think,
are going to change it specifically, but I think the
yeah,
more people start to realize what's going on, the more it's talked about, maybe something can be done.
yeah, I think one thing that I think is becoming more prevalent is baseball is becoming more of like an individual sport. Unfortunately, there's not that like team aspect. There is for like the high school levels, but a lot of like the summer teams, kids are playing for 3, 4 teams in the summer and then getting selected for other teams. So when they're going to all these showcases, they're not playing with people they know. So it really is a all of the attention is on me. It's not a team effort. And I've talked to a number of people that have said, "Oh, well, I need something extra for the summer season to like kind of amp me up because it doesn't have that same team feel as a high school season of like the grind of the same team." So I think that's something that happens a lot where kids are, like, especially if you're a pitcher or in the field, it's like I don't care if we win or lose, which is a whole different topic, but it's more of like how did I play? So even more pressure is put on, and then I'm not going to name. We know the big organizations that rank players now. Within that, they go though, and kids are getting ranked at 10 years old, the top 50 in the state, in the country, in the state, everything, all their metrics up. So it's reinforcing a lot of the outcomes of things that kids are trying to chase at these really young ages and not letting them just play.
So
Um,
let me interrupt you here. So isn't that really where the parents, parents need to get involved and make decisions about what's best for their kids, not just on their physical health, but their mental health as well, and realize, the year round. Let me just go on for a second and get your comments. So that one of the concerns I have with this is the year round training, like we said, which results in a lot of these injuries, and the year round training that ends up burning kids out. So I
mhm.
mean, there's high school. The high school stuff starts right after the first of the year. There's training camps and stuff like that. Then the season starts typically here in Kansas City, like March, goes till May. Then summer ball goes on till right about now. There's a little
Yep.
bit of a break in August, then fall ball happens, and then the training starts up again in November to December. So it's almost a nonstop thing. That's to me where I think parents, especially at the youth level, need to get involved and say, you know what, we're going to take a break now. I had several years ago a 10 or 11-year-old in my office, 10 or 11, and he'd already played by the end of May about 30 games, and they had a couple tournaments in June set up and a couple other local games, and the coach wanted to go to 2 more traveling tournaments out of state in July. And the young man was talking to me with his mom and said, I don't want to play baseball anymore. I just want to go fishing. And the mom's like, well, you're committed to this team. And I said, well, yes, he's committed to the team, but these other tournaments weren't there at the beginning of the year, and anyone wants to add on. I don't think you should go. So I had a meeting with both parents and the son, and they said, we're not doing that. The coach got really angry at him because he's the best player on the team. He's burned out.
Right.
He was tired. Now, that saved his baseball career because he ended up playing uh, in high school. Now he's in high school. He's playing in high school, but he also did other stuff and didn't play year round. Took time off, and so I think we've got that issue. Let me get your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, I think the big thing is one, letting kids be kids, and within structure that they need some structure. It's really the physical playing year round. I think is the big piece. I still think things of like doing resistance training is important throughout those times. That's going to be a big thing to help be able to deal with the stressors that are put on the body while performing and playing, especially if it is more of a functional fitness, not saying they have to go and do all these baseball specific things. Going though and doing stuff that helps with it's a rotational sport. So with rotation, stuff that's going to help them in life and just develop habits, I think is an important thing. I think the big thing is just the constant when you see kids going, they're swinging hours a day, they're throwing a lot, they're doing a lot. I think those are like the repeated actions that need to be drawn back a little bit. I mean, the big thing now is a lot of pitchers, even in high school, they kind of say, it doesn't, like, my arm doesn't feel as good when I take a month off in November, December to throw, so I'm just going to throw year round. And it's like you're just adding even more stress because it doesn't feel as it did at the end of the year, which, as you know, that's just more bullets being thrown in a time that are non-competitive moments. So it's important, and I don't know if the parents fully know that or understand it, because it kind of is sold in the sports realm of like, hey, it needs to specialize now to be able to get into college and be able to play beyond high school level.
So before we wrap things up, Matt, let me get your opinion on this. If you were going to talk to a group of parents about their kids getting involved in baseball, say fifth, sixth grade, they're starting to really enjoy it. What would you tell them about setting parameters, setting limits as parents with what they're doing, and what they need to do to become aware of that?
Yeah, I would say let your kid be an athlete, which means playing multiple sports, having fun, especially at the fifth and sixth grade level. They should be able to go and play two, three more sports, to be able to go and just figure out what they enjoy doing along the way. And then even like on the training side, if it is like a resistance training, like make that fun. It doesn't have to be going and lifting heavy weights. Like make it reactionary stuff, make it like obstacle courses, like different things to get them to move so they can have fun and learn to enjoy movement rather than having it be a chore beyond the field. So I think like making them, like, it's kind of saying like athlete first along it, if the kid is the one who enjoys doing that stuff and has fun playing multiple sports.
One more thing
I think
before we
that's the
wrap
biggest
things
thing.
up, I want to throw in here. Have you had trouble ever? Let me rephrase that. Have you ever had trouble dealing with coaches um, who don't want to get into the mental training, or who think people in our profession shouldn't get involved in this stuff because we don't know enough about dealing with the nuts and bolts of hitting and pitching? Because I have. I wanted to see if you have.
Yeah, I think the challenge has been there's not a full understanding. I think we're getting to the point where they know it's important and starting to know a little bit more about it, but they want the like quick answer to it or the quick fix where it's like, hey, come talk for 10 minutes or whatever. And like, or it's like, oh, this one player is really struggling. But as like a team, that's been a struggle for sure of they feel like there needs to be a protection. And a lot of high schoolers are now trying to make stuff all in-house, the training, the throwing, all of the practices. And I feel like it's becoming a little bit more closer to the closer to the school. So it has been a struggle for sure of coaches not wanting to like have players talk about something that they don't have full control over or know much about.
I know throughout my career, I've had interactions with many major league, in addition to working with major league players for years, major league managers. And the first manager that gave me a chance was John Wathan with the Royals, 1990. Great man, and he got it. He understood it. Trey Hillman, also the manager at the Royals, did that. Rob Thompson is the manager of the Phillies. Good friend. I've known Rob since he was a catcher on the University of Kansas baseball team when I was their team psychologist back in the 80s. Rob's talked to me for years about why the mental side is so important. I know the Phillies the organization has several mental training experts working with them. Rob's told me about it. And so there is an awareness and an understanding more and more than used to be, but still at the same time, there's got to be better education with kids and young athletes on the mental side, but also just the healthy side in terms of what's good and not good for you in terms of overdoing it. Because the thing that concerns me, and as I end up working these last few years, uh, I've noticed more and more kids burning out and losing the interest in sports because of the over pressure, the pressure put on them to have to do it all the time. And I think you're re-emphasizing that as well.
For
So,
sure.
so Matt, tell us if people want to get a hold of you, how can they reach you? It's been a fun interview. I really appreciate what you're saying. I really get what you're doing. I wish you the best of luck with it. So, if people want to reach you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. On Instagram, I have a professional account. It's M Rieger Mental Performance, where I post a lot of different tips and quotes and things on the mental game. And then also through my email, which is mrieger9527@gmail.com. Will be the main easiest ways to reach out.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us tonight and wish you the best of luck. If I ever be of any help to you, please feel free to get a hold of me. And for those of you listening, you can listen to all kinds of episodes of my podcast I do here on my website. That's winnersunlimited.com. Just click on the podcast tab at the top of the page. You'll hear all kinds of interviews for close to 10 years. So thanks for joining.